Hello everyone! The development of artificial intelligence is progressing at a rapid pace. Every day, companies specializing in machine learning are working to make their neural models more advanced and capable of handling an even wider range of tasks. Today, we already have AI systems that can reason like humans and provide balanced, thoughtful answers. But what lies ahead in the next year, 2 years, or even 5? A former OpenAI employee, Leopold Aschenbrenner, has attempted to answer this question. Today, we'll share his essay with you. Titled Situational Awareness: The Decade Ahead, it focuses primarily on AI security issues in the context of global politics. You're on the World 5.0 channel, so let's get started. Let's quickly find out who Aschenbrenner is. At just 19 years old, he graduated from Columbia University. He conducted research on economic growth at Oxford's Global Priorities Institute. And, as we already mentioned, he previously worked at OpenAI on the well-known chatbot ChatGPT. The exact reasons for his dismissal remain unknown, but in April 2024, reports emerged claiming that Aschenbrenner was supposedly fired for leaking information. However, no details about the case were ever published. Perhaps there was no leak at all, and this was just political maneuvering that led many employees to leave the company, including Ilya Sutskever and Andrei Karpathy. Many of those who resigned were directly responsible for AI safety, and that was precisely the field in which Leopold worked as well. We decided to cut out all the fluff from the essay and share only the most interesting parts, the ones that provide a clear picture of how Leopold envisions the future of AI. We've left a link to the essay in the video description if you'd like to read the full text yourself. So, the first part of the essay is called From GPT-4 to AGI. Let's get started. While I used to work at OpenAI, all of this is based on publicly available information, my own ideas, general field knowledge, or science fiction gossip. Over the past year, the talk of the town has shifted from $10 billion compute clusters to $100 billion clusters to trillion-dollar clusters. Every 6 months, another zero is added to the boardroom plans. Behind the scenes, there's a fierce scramble to secure every power contract still available for the rest of the decade, every voltage transformer that can possibly be procured. By the end of the decade, American electricity production will have grown tens of %. From the shale fields of Pennsylvania to the solar farms of Nevada, hundreds of millions of GPUs will hum. If we're lucky, we'll be in an all-out race with the Chinese Communist Party. If we're unlucky, an all-out war. A small note: Leopold Aschenbrenner often touches on topics related to politics in his essay, and later on, you'll understand why this is important. He then moves on to more pressing matters related to our daily lives and work. By 2027, rather than a chatbot, you're going to have something that looks more like an agent, like a coworker. GPT-4 has the raw smarts to do a decent chunk of many people's jobs, but it's sort of like a smart new hire that just showed up 5 minutes ago. It doesn't have any relevant context, hasn't read the company docs or Slack history, or had conversations with members of the team, or spent any time understanding the company internal codebase. A smart new hire isn't that useful 5 minutes after arriving, but they are quite useful a month in. Right now, models can basically only do short tasks. You ask them a question, and they give you an answer. But that's extremely limiting. Most useful cognitive work humans do is longer horizon. It doesn't just take 5 minutes, but hours, days, weeks, or months. A scientist that could only think about a difficult problem for 5 minutes couldn't make any scientific breakthroughs. ChatGPT right now is basically like a human that sits in an isolated box that you can text. We will simply enable models to use a computer like a human would. That means joining your Zoom calls, researching things online, messaging and emailing people, reading shared docs, using your apps and dev tooling, and so on. By the end of this, I expect us to get something that looks a lot like a drop-in remote worker, an agent that joins your company, is onboarded like a new human hire, messages you and colleagues on Slack, and uses your softwares, makes pull requests, and that, given big projects, can do the model equivalent of a human going away for weeks to independently complete the project. GPT-2 to GPT-4 took us from preschooler to smart high schooler, from barely being able to output a few cohesive sentences to acing high school exams and being a useful coding assistant. Likely, it will take us to models that can outperform PhDs and the best experts in a field. We are on course for AGI by 2027. These AI systems will basically be able to automate basically all cognitive jobs. Think, all jobs that could be done remotely. So, the first part of the essay is behind, and it's worth noting that everything said so far is very similar to what Dario Amodei, founder of the company Anthropic, wrote. As of now, in February 2025, AI has already reached a level where it can see your computer screen and guide you in real time on how to use different software. We've seen this both with Anthropic and Google. However, there is reason to believe that this feature won't last long, or rather, its usefulness will be short-lived because the need for manual work will soon disappear entirely. AI will take over all routine and even non-routine tasks. Now, Aschenbrenner makes predictions about AI growth. Let's listen. Part 2. From AGI to Superintelligence, the intelligence explosion. AI progress won't stop at human level. Automated AI research could probably compress a human decade of algorithmic progress into less than a year. We'd be able to run millions of copies of the automated AI researchers. The AI systems we'll likely have by the end of this decade will be unimaginably powerful. Of course, they'll be quantitatively superhuman. On our fleets of hundreds of millions of GPUs by the end of the decade, we'll be able to run a civilization of billions of them, and they will be able to think orders of magnitude faster than humans. More importantly, but harder to imagine, they'll be qualitatively superhuman. Extremely difficult scientific and technological problems that a human would be stuck on for decades will seem just so obvious to them. As we get superintelligence and apply our billions of agents to research and development across many fields, factories would go from human-run to AI-directed, using human physical labor, to soon being fully run by swarms of robots. Extremely accelerated technological progress, combined with the ability to automate all human labor, could dramatically accelerate economic growth. The drone swarms and robo-armies will be a big deal, but they are just the beginning. We should expect completely new kinds of weapons. The intelligence explosion and the immediate post-superintelligence period will be one of the most volatile, tense, dangerous, and wildest periods ever in human history. And by the end of the decade, we'll likely be in the midst of it. Well, that was the second part of essay. As we can see, Leopold bets that AI will surpass human capabilities in the coming years, both quantitatively and qualitatively. Thanks to automated research and millions of copies of super-intelligent AIs operating faster and more efficiently than humans, scientific and technological progress will accelerate by orders of magnitude. This will lead to full industrial automation, the creation of new types of weaponry, and a radical transformation of the economy. At the end of his statement, the author warns that this intelligence explosion will make the next decade one of the most unstable and dangerous periods in human history. Superintelligent systems capable of solving highly complex problems could lead to both incredible progress and global risks, including military and social upheaval. And unfortunately, it is hard to disagree with that. We will return to the issue of security later, but for now, keep listening. The third part is divided into 4 subtopics, but we have merged them into one. Here, he discusses the technical challenges of maintaining an ultra-powerful AI. Part 3. Energy and Security. The most extraordinary techno-capital acceleration has been set in motion. As AI revenue grows rapidly, many trillions of dollars will go into GPU, data center, and power build-out before the end of the decade. The industrial mobilization, including growing US electricity production by tens of %, will be intense. Zuckerberg bought 350,000 H100s. Amazon bought a 1 gigawatt data center campus next to a nuclear power plant. Rumors suggest a 1 gigawatt cluster is being built in Kuwait. Media report that Microsoft and OpenAI are rumored to be working on a $100 billion cluster, slated for 2028, a cost comparable to the International Space Station. White-collar workers are paid tens of trillions of dollars in wages annually worldwide. A drop-in remote worker that automates even a fraction of white-collar cognitive jobs. Imagine a truly automated AI coder would pay for the trillion-dollar cluster. Global investment in artificial intelligence, projected to reach $1 trillion annually by 2027, will be substantial, one of the largest capital investments in history, but not unprecedented. At their peak funding years, the Manhattan and Apollo programs reached 0.4% of GDP, or about $100 billion per year in today's dollars. Surprisingly little. With $1 trillion per year, AI investments would account for roughly 3% of GDP. Between 1996 and 2001, telecom companies invested nearly $1 trillion, adjusted for inflation, in building the internet's infrastructure. Probably the single biggest constraint on the supply side will be power. Already, at nearer-term scales, power has become the binding constraint. There simply isn't much spare capacity, and power contracts are usually long-term locked in. A brief clarification. This discussion revolves around the massive investments in artificial intelligence and the competition for energy resources and GPUs. Not only the US and China are involved in this race, but also other countries, such as Russia, Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, and many others, especially in the Middle East. Here, Leopold presents a graph of US energy consumption. According to the graph, by 2030, energy consumption related to AI, particularly large-scale computing clusters, will rise sharply. This potentially raises concerns about whether the US energy system can handle this demand, given the stagnation in overall electricity production. He then elaborates further. Total US electricity generation has barely grown 5% in the last decade. The trillion-dollar, 100-gigawatt cluster alone would require approximately 20% of current US electricity generation in 6 years. Together with large inference capacity, demand will be multiples higher. While chips are usually what comes to mind when people think about AI supply constraints, they're likely a smaller constraint than power. Global production of AI chips is still a pretty small percent of TSMC leading-edge production, likely less than 10%. Total AI chip demand by 2030 will be a multiple of TSMC's current total leading-edge logic chip capacity, just for AI. TSMC doubled in the past 5 years. They'd likely need to go at least twice as fast on their pace of expansion to meet AI chip demand. Even besides national competition, securing model weights is critical for preventing AI catastrophes as well. All of our hand-wringing and protective measures are for naught if a bad actor can just steal the model and do whatever they want with it, circumventing any safety layers. By the time the decade is out, we'll have billions of vastly superhuman AI agents running around. These superhuman AI agents will be capable of extremely complex and creative behavior. We will have no hope of following along. We'll be like first graders trying to supervise with multiple doctorates. In essence, we face a problem of handing off trust. By the end of the intelligence explosion, we won't have any hope of understanding what our billion superintelligences are doing, except as they might choose to explain to us, like they might to a child. And we don't yet have the technical ability to reliably guarantee even basic side constraints for these systems, like don't lie or follow the law or don't try to exfiltrate your server. The core technical problem of superalignment is simple. How do we control AI systems much smarter than us? Imagine, for example, a superhuman AI system generating 1 million lines of code in a new programming language it invented. If you asked a human rater in an RLHF procedure, does this code contain any security backdoors? They simply wouldn't know. And here Leopold includes an image to illustrate his thoughts. Take a look. He continues, reliably controlling AI systems much smarter than we are is an unsolved technical problem. And while it is a solvable problem, things could very easily go off the rails during a rapid intelligence explosion. Managing this will be extremely tense. Failure could easily be catastrophic. Right now, no lab has demonstrated much of a willingness to make any costly trade-offs to get safety right. By default, we'll probably stumble into the intelligence explosion and have gone through a few orders of magnitude before people even realize what we've gotten into. We're counting way too much on luck here. A dictator who wields the power of superintelligence would command concentrated power unlike any we've ever seen. In addition to being able to impose their will on other countries, they could enshrine their rule internally. Millions of AI-controlled robotic law enforcement agents could police their populace. Mass surveillance would be hypercharged. Dictator-loyal AIs could individually assess every citizen for dissent, with advanced, near-perfect lie detection rooting out any disloyalty. So, as we can see, Leopold once again touches on politics and expresses concerns about how and by whom AI will be applied, and for what purposes. Indeed, there is a significant risk that such technologies will be misused. At the same time, he voices apprehension that AI models could evolve beyond our comprehension to the point where we simply won't be able to understand them, losing all control. For now, everything seems to be under control, but AI's growth is expected to be exponential. In the final section of his essay, Aschenbrenner draws parallels with COVID when the world was on the brink of collapse, yet no one could believe it. Just listen. Part 4. The Project. A turn of events seared into my memory is late February to mid-March of 2020. In those last weeks of February and early days of March, I was in utter despair. It seemed clear that we were on the COVID exponential. A plague was about to sweep the country. The collapse of our hospitals was imminent, and yet almost nobody took it seriously. And yet within just a few weeks, the entire country shut down. The next few years in AI will feel similar. We're in the mid-game now. 2023 was already a wild shift. AGI went from a fringe topic you'd be hesitant to associate with to the subject of major Senate hearings and summits of world leaders. By around 2025 to 2026, I expect the next truly shocking step: change. AI will generate over $100 billion in annual revenue for major tech companies and surpass PhDs in solving simple problems. By 2028, we will have models trained in clusters, costing more than $100 billion. Fully developed artificial intelligence agents and virtual remote workers will begin to widely automate software development and perform other intellectual work. Every year, the acceleration will be staggering. Around 2027 or so, the mood in Washington will turn grim. People will start to intuitively sense what is happening. They will be afraid. From the halls of the Pentagon to closed-door briefings in Congress, the obvious question will be asked. The question on everyone's mind: do we need a Manhattan Project for AGI? First slowly, then all at once, it will become clear. It is happening. The situation is getting out of control. This is the most significant national security challenge for the US since the invention of the atomic bomb. In one form or another, the national security apparatus will be heavily involved. The project will be necessary. Indeed, the only plausible response. This doesn't need to look like literal nationalization, with AI lab researchers now employed by the military or whatever, though it might. Rather, I expect a more suave orchestration. The relationship with the DoD might look like the relationship the DoD has with Boeing or Lockheed Martin. But by late 2026, 27, 28, it will be underway. The core AGI research team, a few hundred researchers, will move to a secure location. The trillion-dollar cluster will be built in record speed. The project will be on. Within years, superintelligence would completely shake up the military balance of power. By the early 2030s, the entirety of the US arsenal will probably be obsolete. It will not just be a matter of modernization, but a wholesale replacement. It will become clear that the development of AGI will fall in a category more like nukes than the internet. Yes, of course it'll be dual use, but nuclear technology was dual use too. The civilian applications will have their time. But in the fog of the AGI endgame, for better or for worse, national security will be the primary backdrop. Ultimately, my main claim here is descriptive. Whether we like it or not, superintelligence won't look like a science fiction startup, and in some way will be primarily in the domain of national security. Okay, the chapter 4 is ended. In other words, the development of artificial intelligence in the coming years will be rapid and transformative. Within a year, AI will become a crucial economic factor, generating billions of dollars in revenue for major corporations. And in just a few years, its impact will start to fundamentally reshape national security. Washington will recognize the challenges and threats, leading to the launch of a large-scale Manhattan Project-style initiative, as mentioned by Leopold, aimed at developing artificial general intelligence. By the early 2030s, AGI will become a strategic tool requiring a reassessment of military doctrine and technology. Although these technologies will have dual-use applications, the primary focus will remain on national security. In the long run, superintelligence will become one of the key factors of global influence, shifting the balance of power between nations. In the final section, Leopold elaborates on this timeline and once again emphasizes his predictions regarding the global restructuring of the world order in favor of AI technologies. Part 5. Parting thoughts. And so, by 27 to 28, the endgame will be on. By 2028 to 2029, the intelligence explosion will be underway. By 2030, we will have summoned superintelligence in all its power and might. Before the decade is out, we will have built superintelligence. That is what most of this series has been about. For most people I talk to in sci-fi, that's where the screen goes black. But the decade after, the 2030s, will be at least one as eventful. By the end of it, the world will have been utterly, unrecognizably transformed. A new world order will have been forged. Right now, there's perhaps a few hundred people in the world who realize what's about to hit us, who understand just how crazy things are about to get, who have situational awareness. These are great and honorable people, but they are just people. Soon the AIs will be running the world, but we're in for one last rodeo. 2023 was AI Wake Up. Behind the scenes, the most staggering techno-capital acceleration has been put into motion. Brace for the G-forces. Well, on this ambiguous note, Leopold Aschenbrenner, a former OpenAI employee, concludes his essay. In the end, we can say only one thing. We really should be prepared for everything the author described. We don't want to paint an overly dark picture, but it is absolutely clear that progress will not stop at anything except resource shortages, and even that will be addressed by all available means. This will be a race that certainly won't leave behind a clean asphalt road, but we will keep believing in the best and hoping that governments will be able to keep the situation under control so that we can all live in peace and harmony with technology, and most importantly, in harmony with ourselves. You have been on the World 5.0 channel. Don't forget about our Telegram channel. There is more interesting news about high technologies. Thank you for watching, and see you soon.